When the alliance against you begins to break, begins with a situation that many chosen ones recognize only after the conflict has already unfolded. There are moments in life when opposition does not come from a single individual, but from a coordinated partnership between two people who believe that by working together, they can overpower the chosen one's voice, reputation, or influence. At the beginning, this alliance may appear strong and unshakable. The two individuals support each other's narratives, reinforce each other's perspectives, and present a unified front that makes their position seem convincing to others. For the chosen one, facing such a partnership can feel overwhelming, because the pressure does not come from one direction, but from several at once. Conversations may begin shifting in subtle ways, rumors may circulate quietly, and situations may be arranged in ways that make the chosen one appear isolated or misunderstood. During this stage, it may seem as though the alliance holds all the advantage. Their coordination creates the illusion of strength, and observers who only see the surface may assume that the chosen one will eventually retreat under the weight of the pressure. Yet what many people fail to understand is that alliances built on manipulation or hidden motives rarely remain stable for long. While the partnership may appear confident outwardly, the foundation beneath it is often fragile. Each individual involved may carry their own motivations: jealousy, insecurity, fear of exposure, or the desire to maintain control over a narrative. In the beginning, these motives align because both partners believe they will benefit from working together. But as time passes and the chosen one refuses to collapse under pressure, the alliance begins experiencing a new kind of tension. Maintaining a shared narrative requires constant coordination, and small differences in perspective start creating cracks that were previously hidden. The chosen one may not notice this shift immediately, because the collapse of such alliances often begins quietly. What once looked like perfect unity slowly turns into disagreement behind the scenes. One partner may begin questioning the strategy, while the other becomes increasingly defensive about the past actions taken against the chosen one. Observers who are paying attention begin sensing that something is changing. The same partnership that once seemed confident now shows signs of strain and instability. This is where the deeper truth of the situation begins to emerge. The central message of this story becomes clear. The alliance that once believed it could take down the chosen one is now starting to unravel under the weight of its own contradictions. What looked like strength was often only temporary coordination, and as the pressure continues, the cracks within the partnership begin revealing themselves more clearly. How the alliance against you was formed rarely begins with a dramatic moment where two people openly decide to oppose the chosen one. Instead, it usually develops quietly through shared frustrations, assumptions, and conversations that gradually align their perspectives against a common target. In the early stages, the individuals involved may not even describe their actions as forming an alliance. To them, it may feel like a natural connection built around similar opinions or mutual complaints. One person shares a negative interpretation of the chosen one's actions, and the other responds with agreement or a similar experience. These exchanges create a sense of validation. Each individual feels understood by the other, and the bond between them strengthens through the reinforcement of the same narrative. Over time, what began as casual discussion transforms into a partnership with a shared objective, diminishing the influence or credibility of the chosen one. At first, this alignment may appear harmless or insignificant. The individuals involved might simply believe they are discussing concerns or correcting what they perceive as a problem. But as these conversations continue, their perspectives begin shaping how they interpret every new interaction involving the chosen one. Instead of approaching situations with curiosity or neutrality, They start viewing events through a lens already colored by suspicion. This shift changes how they communicate with others. Subtle remarks about the chosen one appear in conversations, sometimes framed as jokes, sometimes as warnings, and sometimes as expressions of concern. The effect is gradual but powerful. Repeated suggestions influence how other people begin interpreting the chosen one's actions as well. The alliance begins expanding its reach without appearing openly confrontational. One of the reasons alliances like this feel strong in the beginning is that they provide emotional reinforcement for the individuals involved. Each partner confirms the other's beliefs, reducing the likelihood that either of them will question their assumptions. When someone expresses doubt about the narrative they have created, the other quickly restores confidence by repeating the same story or highlighting moments that seem to support it. This feedback loop strengthens their partnership and makes them feel justified in continuing their actions. The more they repeat the narrative, the more convinced they become that they are correct. From their perspective, the alliance feels stable and even necessary. Yet beneath this apparent stability, the partnership often rests on fragile foundations. Each person involved may have very different reasons for participating in the alliance. One individual might feel threatened by the chosen one's independence or integrity, perceiving those qualities as a challenge to their own position within the environment. Another might simply enjoy the sense of influence gained by shaping how others view the situation. These motivations are not always openly acknowledged between the partners. Instead, they remain hidden beneath the shared narrative that keeps them working together. As long as the alliance appears successful, these differences remain unnoticed. Both partners focus on the immediate objective of weakening the chosen one's presence or credibility. During this stage, the chosen one may not fully understand how the alliance formed or why the tension around them seems to be increasing. They may notice small shifts in behavior from the people involved. Conversations feel slightly different, responses become more guarded, and certain individuals appear unusually coordinated in their reactions to the chosen one's actions. Yet, without direct evidence, it can be difficult to identify what is truly happening. Many chosen ones initially assume that misunderstandings are temporary and can be resolved through patience or honest communication. They may attempt to clarify situations or restore balance through calm discussion. But alliances formed through shared narratives often resist such attempts because the narrative itself has already shaped how the partners interpret new information. Anything that contradicts the story they have created may be dismissed or reframed to fit the existing belief. As the partnership strengthens, the individuals involved begin acting more strategically. They coordinate their responses during discussions involving the chosen one and reinforce each other's statements in ways that make their perspective appear more credible to observers. When one partner speaks critically about the chosen one, the other confirms the statement, creating the impression that multiple people independently reached the same conclusion. This dynamic can influence how others perceive the situation because repeated agreement between two individuals can appear convincing even when the underlying narrative is incomplete or distorted. The alliance, therefore, gains momentum through cooperation and repetition. The chosen one, however, often begins noticing patterns during this phase, even if they cannot immediately identify the full structure of the alliance. They observe how certain individuals consistently respond in similar ways whenever particular topics arise. They see how conversations that once felt open now contain subtle tension or indirect criticism. Over time, these observations accumulate and form a clearer picture of what is happening beneath the surface. The chosen one may not confront the alliance immediately, but their awareness begins sharpening. Instead of reacting impulsively to each moment of tension, they watch carefully, recognizing that the situation is larger than any single conversation. Meanwhile, the alliance continues operating under the belief that its coordination ensures success. The partners involved feel confident that their shared perspective will eventually shape the environment around them. They may even begin escalating their actions, believing that increased pressure will force the chosen one to retreat or lose credibility. In their minds, the partnership provides protection because each person can rely on the other to reinforce the narrative if questions arise. This sense of security encourages them to continue pursuing the same strategy. Yet what they do not realize is that alliances built primarily on opposition often contain the seeds of their own instability. When two individuals unite around a shared enemy rather than a shared principle, their connection depends entirely on maintaining that conflict. If circumstances begin changing, or if the chosen one refuses to react as expected, the foundation of the alliance can weaken quickly. The partners must constantly reaffirm their narrative to keep the partnership intact. Any hesitation or doubt from one partner can create tension that spreads through the entire structure. The chosen one's response to this situation becomes critical. Instead of rushing into confrontation or attempting to dismantle the alliance directly, many chosen ones instinctively choose patience. They recognize that reacting impulsively could reinforce the narrative being built against them. By remaining calm and consistent in their actions, they create space for observers to evaluate the situation independently. Over time, this patience begins revealing the true nature of the alliance. People watching the dynamics may start noticing that the criticism directed at the chosen one appears unusually coordinated. They see how the same individuals repeatedly reinforce each other's perspectives while dismissing alternative viewpoints. These observations create quiet questions within the environment. Although the alliance may still appear strong on the surface, the seeds of doubt have already been planted. The story of how the alliance formed therefore becomes an important lesson about human behavior. Partnerships built on shared negativity can feel powerful at first because they create a sense of unity and validation for those involved. Yet this unity is often fragile because it relies on maintaining a particular narrative rather than pursuing truth. As the chosen one continues moving forward with patience and clarity, the weaknesses within that structure gradually begin revealing themselves. The alliance that once seemed formidable starts facing pressures it was never designed to withstand. And the same partnership that once appeared to dominate the situation slowly begins approaching the moment where its hidden cracks can no longer remain unseen. Why they believed they would succeed begins with understanding the mindset that often exists inside alliances formed against a chosen one. When two individuals decide, either consciously or unconsciously, to work together against someone they perceive as a threat, their confidence usually grows quickly. The presence of another person who agrees with their perspective reinforces the belief that they are correct. Each conversation strengthens the narrative they have constructed about the chosen one, and each moment of agreement makes their strategy feel more justified. Over time, this mutual reinforcement creates a sense of certainty that can become dangerously convincing. The partners involved begin believing not only that they are right, but also that success against the chosen one is inevitable. In their minds, the situation becomes simple. Two voices aligned against one must naturally overpower the individual standing alone. From this perspective, the alliance appears strategically strong. They see themselves as having numbers, influence, and coordination on their side. The chosen one, by contrast, may appear isolated or misunderstood within the environment. This imbalance gives the alliance a sense of advantage that encourages them to push forward with increasing confidence. One of the reasons they believed they would succeed lies in their understanding of social dynamics. In many environments, people rely heavily on collective opinion to determine what they believe is true. When two individuals repeat the same story consistently, it can begin influencing how others interpret events. The alliance may have assumed that by presenting a unified narrative repeatedly, they could gradually shape the perception of the entire environment around them. If others began hearing the same message from multiple sources, the chosen one's voice could be overshadowed. This strategy often works in situations where the person being targeted reacts emotionally or becomes defensive under pressure. The alliance may have expected exactly this outcome. They assumed that if the chosen one felt overwhelmed by criticism or isolation, they would eventually respond in ways that confirmed the negative narrative being created about them. Emotional reactions could then be used as evidence to justify the alliance's position, reinforcing the story they had already begun spreading. In their minds, the process appeared almost automatic. Apply pressure, provoke reaction, then use the reaction to prove the original accusation. What they failed to consider, however, was the nature of the person they were dealing with. The chosen one often carries a level of resilience and awareness that is not immediately visible to others. Because chosen ones frequently respond to conflict with patience rather than impulsive retaliation, they can be misunderstood as weak or indecisive. The alliance may have interpreted the chosen one's calmness as a sign that they were incapable of confronting the situation effectively. This misinterpretation strengthened their confidence. They believed that if the chosen one had not reacted strongly in earlier moments of tension, then they likely would not respond effectively when the pressure intensified. Another reason the alliance believed they would succeed involved their perception of influence. They may have felt that they possessed stronger social connections, louder voices, or greater credibility within the environment than the chosen one. When individuals believe they control the narrative within a community, they often assume they can control the outcome of conflicts as well. The alliance may have believed that by speaking confidently and reinforcing each other's statements, they could shape how others interpreted the chosen one's behavior. From their perspective, the outcome of the conflict was simply a matter of maintaining consistency in their story long enough for it to become accepted as truth. Yet beneath this confidence, another factor often exists: fear disguised as control. Many alliances formed against chosen ones begin because the individuals involved feel threatened by something they cannot easily explain. The chosen one's independence, clarity, or refusal to conform to certain expectations can create discomfort for those who prefer predictable social dynamics. Instead of confronting this discomfort directly, some individuals respond by attempting to weaken or discredit the person who caused it. By forming an alliance, they create the illusion of stability. The partnership allows them to feel supported in their actions and reduces the risk of questioning their own motivations. As long as both partners remain committed to the narrative, neither has to confront the possibility that their assumptions might be incorrect. This psychological reinforcement plays a powerful role in why they believed success was certain. Every time they discussed the chosen one together, their confidence grew. They interpreted neutral events as confirmation of their perspective and dismissed any evidence that contradicted it. This selective interpretation of reality made their strategy appear stronger than it actually was. Within their conversations, they may have imagined the chosen one eventually retreating, losing credibility, or becoming isolated within the environment. These imagined outcomes reinforced their belief that they were moving toward victory. Meanwhile, the chosen one continued navigating the situation with patience and awareness. Instead of reacting impulsively, they observed the patterns emerging around them. They noticed how the same individuals repeated similar narratives and how their statements reinforced each other. Rather than confronting the alliance immediately, the chosen one focused on maintaining clarity in their own actions. This response created an unexpected dynamic. The alliance had prepared themselves to face resistance filled with emotion and chaos, but instead, they encountered steadiness and discipline. Because their strategy relied on provoking a reaction, the absence of that reaction began disrupting their expectations. Yet in the early stages, they may not have noticed this disruption. Their confidence remained strong because they continued reinforcing each other's beliefs. They interpreted the chosen one's calmness as evidence that their strategy was working. In their minds, silence or patience meant surrender. What they did not realize was that the chosen one's composure was quietly undermining the narrative they had created. Observers within the environment began noticing the difference between the alliance's accusations and the chosen one's consistent behavior. The calmness that the alliance interpreted as weakness began appearing to others as strength. This shift did not happen instantly. It developed slowly as people compared what they were hearing with what they were seeing. Each time the chosen one responded with clarity instead of chaos, the alliance's assumptions became slightly weaker. However, from the perspective of the alliance, these subtle changes remained invisible for a long time. Their confidence had been built through repetition and mutual reinforcement, and it continued guiding their actions even as the environment around them began evolving. They still believed that the chosen one would eventually collapse under the weight of the pressure. They assumed that persistence alone would guarantee their success. What they did not yet understand was that their strategy depended entirely on a response that was never going to come. The chosen one's resilience had already changed the direction of the conflict long before the alliance realized it. Their calm discipline was quietly reshaping the narrative, revealing that the strength of an alliance built on opposition cannot match the stability of someone standing firmly in truth. And as time moved forward, the confidence that once fueled the alliance would slowly begin transforming into uncertainty, setting the stage for the next phase of the story, where their belief in inevitable success begins to unravel. The hidden tension inside their partnership slowly begins revealing a truth that was always present beneath the surface of the alliance. While the two individuals appeared united in their efforts against the chosen one, the reality of their partnership was far more complicated than it seemed. Alliances formed around opposition often look strong from the outside because both people present the same narrative publicly. They reinforce each other's statements, support each other's accusations, and create the impression of complete agreement. Yet beneath that appearance of unity, deeper motivations frequently exist that are never fully discussed between the partners themselves. Each person enters the alliance carrying their own reasons for participating, and those reasons are not always identical. In many cases, one partner may be driven by jealousy or insecurity, feeling threatened by the presence or influence of the chosen one. The other may be motivated by a different desire, such as maintaining social control, gaining attention, or reinforcing their own status within the environment. At the beginning of the partnership, these differences remain hidden because both individuals share the same short-term objective, weakening the chosen one's position. This shared goal acts like glue, holding the alliance together even though the deeper motivations behind it are not aligned. As long as the strategy appears to be working, neither partner feels the need to question the other's intentions. Their conversations revolve around reinforcing the narrative they have created rather than examining why they are pursuing it in the first place. The partnership, therefore, feels stable during the early stages because the conflict with the chosen one provides a common focus. But alliances built around opposition, rather than shared values, rarely remain stable indefinitely. Over time, the subtle differences between the partners begin creating small points of tension. These tensions often appear in quiet moments when the chosen one is not present. During private conversations where one partner expresses doubt or frustration about how the situation is unfolding. For example, one person might begin questioning whether the strategy against the chosen one is producing the results they expected. They may notice that the chosen one has not reacted emotionally or retreated under pressure as predicted. Instead of acknowledging this openly, the other partner might respond defensively, insisting that the plan simply needs more time or more pressure to succeed. These conversations create the first cracks in the alliance, even though they remain invisible to outsiders. The tension does not appear immediately in public interactions because both partners still understand that their strength comes from presenting a united front. However, internally, the dynamic begins shifting. One partner may start feeling uneasy about the direction of the conflict, sensing that something about the situation is not unfolding as expected. The other partner may respond by becoming more determined, doubling down on the narrative they have been promoting. This difference in reaction creates subtle friction that grows slowly over time. Another source of hidden tension arises from the way responsibility is distributed within the alliance. When two people collaborate in opposition against someone else, the success of the plan is often shared equally in their minds. Yet, when challenges or setbacks appear, responsibility becomes less clear. One partner may begin wondering whether the other handled certain conversations poorly or made decisions that weakened the strategy. These doubts rarely surface directly at first. Instead, they appear through small comments or changes in tone that signal frustration. Each partner begins quietly evaluating the other's role in the situation. Trust within the alliance begins weakening, even though the outward appearance of cooperation remains intact. The chosen one, meanwhile, continues responding to the situation with calm patience. Their refusal to react impulsively becomes one of the factors that intensifies the tension inside the partnership. The alliance had expected the chosen one to provide emotional reactions that would justify their narrative. When those reactions never appear, the partners are left facing an uncomfortable reality. Their strategy depends on circumstances they cannot control. This uncertainty places pressure on the relationship between them. One partner may start recognizing that the chosen one's behavior contradicts the story they have been telling others. They may begin wondering whether continuing the alliance is worth the growing tension it creates. Yet, admitting such doubts openly would mean challenging the entire foundation of the partnership. For many individuals, that admission feels too risky. As a result, the tension remains hidden beneath the surface, expressed indirectly through subtle disagreements or moments of silence during conversations that once flowed easily. Observers around the environment might not notice these changes immediately, but the shift in energy within the alliance becomes increasingly difficult for the partners themselves to ignore. The conversations that once strengthened their confidence now feel heavier and more complicated. Instead of reinforcing certainty, they begin raising questions that neither person is comfortable answering. This internal strain creates a fragile atmosphere within the partnership. Each partner starts protecting their own position more carefully, anticipating the possibility that the alliance might eventually collapse. The dynamic becomes less about cooperation and more about preserving individual credibility in case the situation turns against them. This change in mindset further weakens the foundation of the partnership, because genuine trust between the partners begins disappearing. Instead of supporting each other unconditionally, they begin evaluating how the outcome of the conflict might affect them personally. The chosen one may still appear unaware of these developments, because the alliance continues presenting a coordinated narrative publicly. Yet beneath the surface, the tension continues growing with each passing interaction. The original unity that once defined the partnership slowly transforms into a fragile arrangement sustained by habit rather than confidence. The partners remain connected because separating would require acknowledging that their strategy might have been misguided from the beginning. For many people, that realization is difficult to accept. It challenges not only the alliance itself, but also the assumptions that led them into it. As a result, the tension remains unresolved for a time, building quietly beneath the surface of the relationship. Eventually, however, these hidden pressures reach a point where they can no longer remain concealed. The alliance that once seemed so coordinated begins showing signs of instability. Small disagreements become more frequent, and moments of silence replace the easy reinforcement that once defined their conversations. Each partner senses that something within the relationship has changed, even if neither is ready to articulate it openly. This stage marks the beginning of the alliance's unraveling. The partnership that once appeared solid now rests on fragile ground, sustained by appearances rather than genuine unity. And as the chosen one continues moving forward with calm discipline, the tension within the alliance grows stronger, bringing it closer to the moment when the cracks between the partners finally become impossible to hide. When the plan against you started failing, marks the quiet turning point where the confidence that once fueled the alliance begins slowly eroding. In the early stages of their strategy, the two individuals believed they had already calculated the outcome. They assumed the chosen one would eventually react emotionally, retreat from the pressure, or lose credibility within the environment. Their plan relied heavily on predictable human behavior. Most people, when facing coordinated criticism or manipulation, eventually respond in ways that confirm the narrative being built against them. Anger, frustration, or desperation can be easily interpreted as proof that the accusations were justified. The alliance counted on this reaction as the final step that would secure their success. But what they did not anticipate was the discipline of the chosen one. Instead of responding with emotional chaos, the chosen one maintained a level of composure that disrupted the entire structure of the plan. At first, the alliance interpreted this calmness as temporary hesitation. They believed the chosen one was simply gathering strength before reacting. When no reaction came, they assumed the pressure had not yet reached the necessary level. As a result, they intensified their efforts, believing that additional pressure would eventually provoke the expected response. Yet each new attempt produced the same result. The chosen one remained steady, responding with clarity instead of emotion. This consistency slowly began weakening the strategy they had relied upon. A plan designed around provoking emotional collapse cannot succeed when the target refuses to collapse. Instead of generating evidence to support their narrative, the alliance found themselves facing a situation where their own behavior was becoming more visible to observers. Every attempt to escalate the pressure revealed another layer of coordination that had previously been hidden. People within the environment began noticing patterns that had once gone unnoticed. They saw how the same individuals repeated the same accusations and reinforced each other's statements in conversations involving the chosen one. At first, these patterns were subtle, but repetition gradually made them clearer. Observers began comparing what they heard about the chosen one with what they actually saw in their behavior. The contrast between the narrative and reality started raising quiet questions. The chosen one's calm responses played a crucial role in this shift. By refusing to react impulsively, they allowed the situation to unfold naturally. Their patience created space for others to observe the dynamics of the conflict without the distraction of emotional chaos. When someone maintains composure while others continue escalating tension, the imbalance becomes increasingly difficult to ignore. The alliance had expected to control the narrative by provoking reactions from the chosen one. Instead, their actions were now drawing attention to themselves. This reversal created a new form of pressure within the partnership. The individuals involved began noticing that their strategy was not producing the results they had predicted. The chosen one remained present, clear, and composed, despite everything directed toward them. Rather than disappearing from the environment, they continued participating with the same calm consistency they had shown from the beginning. This unexpected resilience disrupted the assumptions that had guided the alliance from the start. Confidence began giving way to frustration. The partners involved in the strategy started asking themselves questions they had not considered earlier. Why was the chosen one not reacting the way they expected? Why were observers beginning to question the narrative instead of accepting it? These questions introduced uncertainty into a partnership that had previously operated on mutual reinforcement. When individuals build confidence by repeating the same narrative to each other, doubt can feel especially destabilizing. One partner might begin suggesting that the strategy needs to change, while the other insists that more pressure will eventually produce the desired outcome. These disagreements add new tension to the alliance. The frustration grows stronger when the chosen one continues demonstrating discipline in each interaction. Instead of providing emotional reactions that could be used against them, they remain steady. Each calm response becomes another moment where the alliance's expectations fail to materialize. Over time, this pattern begins influencing how the broader environment perceives the situation. People who once believed the alliance's narrative start reconsidering their assumptions. They notice that the chosen one's behavior remains consistent even under intense pressure. Meanwhile, the individuals promoting the accusations appear increasingly focused on repeating the same story rather than presenting new evidence. This shift in perception does not happen overnight. It develops gradually as people compare words with actions. Each time the chosen one demonstrates composure, the gap between the narrative and reality becomes more visible. The alliance had hoped that persistence would eventually force the chosen one into retreat. Instead, persistence began exposing the weaknesses of their strategy. Their repeated attempts to provoke reactions now appear excessive rather than convincing. Observers who once remained neutral begin questioning why so much effort is directed towards someone who remains calm and composed. These questions quietly undermine the authority of the alliance's narrative. Internally, the partners involved feel the pressure building. They realize that continuing the same strategy without results risks damaging their own credibility. Yet changing direction would require acknowledging that their earlier assumptions may have been incorrect. This realization is difficult for many people to accept, especially when their identity has become tied to the narrative they have been promoting. As a result, the alliance enters a stage where frustration replaces confidence, but no clear solution appears. One partner may begin expressing concerns about how the situation is unfolding. The other might respond defensively, insisting that abandoning the strategy would make them appear weak or inconsistent. These disagreements deepen the tension within the partnership. Meanwhile, the chosen one continues moving forward with the same discipline that disrupted the plan in the first place. Their calm presence acts like a mirror, reflecting the instability growing inside the alliance. The more the partners struggle to maintain control over the narrative, the more their internal disagreements begin influencing their interactions. Observers start noticing subtle changes in their behavior. Conversations between the partners become less coordinated. Moments of hesitation appear where certainty once existed. The plan that once seemed carefully designed now appears increasingly fragile. This stage represents the beginning of the alliance's unraveling. The strategy built around pressure and manipulation cannot function effectively when the chosen one refuses to provide the reaction it requires. Instead of weakening the chosen one, the repeated attempts to provoke them have revealed something unexpected: resilience that cannot easily be shaken. As this realization spreads through the environment, the narrative begins shifting. What once appeared as a coordinated effort to expose the chosen one now looks more like a campaign struggling to justify itself. The alliance, once confident in its success, now faces the reality that the plan they believed would defeat the chosen one has begun collapsing under the weight of its own miscalculations. The moment one of them begins doubting marks the subtle but decisive shift where the unity that once defined the alliance begins quietly unraveling from within. Up until this stage, the partnership had been sustained by mutual reinforcement. Each individual reassured the other that their strategy against the chosen one was justified and that eventual success was only a matter of persistence. Whenever uncertainty appeared, they repeated the same narrative until confidence returned. This cycle of reinforcement had created the illusion that their alliance was unbreakable. Yet the moment doubt enters even one person's mind, the structure that once felt solid begins losing its balance. Doubt rarely arrives dramatically. It appears gradually through small observations that cannot easily be ignored. One partner may begin noticing details that contradict the narrative they had been repeating for so long. Perhaps they observe the chosen one continuing to behave with calm integrity despite the pressure placed upon them. Perhaps they see how observers within the environment are no longer responding to the accusations with the same certainty they once did. These moments create quiet questions that begin forming in the back of the mind. At first, the individual experiencing this doubt may try to dismiss it. They remind themselves of the reasons they originally joined the alliance. They repeat the same explanations they once shared confidently with their partner. Yet, something feels different now. The certainty that once guided their thinking begins feeling less convincing. Each new interaction with the chosen one adds another layer to this internal conflict. The chosen one's discipline and patience continue disrupting the expectations that once seemed obvious. The partner experiencing doubt may start recognizing that the situation is not unfolding the way they had imagined. Instead of the chosen one collapsing under pressure, they continue demonstrating resilience. Instead of losing credibility, they appear increasingly composed in the eyes of observers. These realizations create discomfort because they challenge the narrative that has been maintained for so long. A person can maintain confidence in a strategy only when the evidence around them supports it. When reality begins contradicting that strategy, the mind naturally starts searching for explanations. This internal questioning becomes the first crack within the alliance. The partner who begins doubting may initially keep these thoughts private. They may worry that expressing uncertainty will create conflict with the other person involved in the alliance. After all, their partnership has been built on presenting a unified front. Admitting doubt could weaken that unity and expose vulnerabilities in their shared narrative. For this reason, the first stage of doubt often unfolds silently. The individual continues participating in conversations and reinforcing the narrative publicly, while privately struggling with growing uncertainty. This internal conflict can create subtle changes in behavior. The partner who once spoke confidently about the chosen one may begin hesitating before repeating certain statements. Their tone may shift slightly, revealing a hint of caution where there was once certainty. They might begin observing the chosen one more carefully, trying to reconcile what they see with what they previously believed. These small changes often go unnoticed at first, but they represent the beginning of a deeper transformation within the alliance. Eventually, the internal tension becomes difficult to contain. The partner experiencing doubt may attempt to discuss their concerns with the other person in the alliance. This conversation rarely happens openly or directly at first. Instead, it may appear as a subtle question or observation, perhaps suggesting that the chosen one's behavior does not match the narrative they have been repeating, or wondering whether the situation has become more complicated than they initially thought. The response they receive from their partner often determines how the alliance will evolve from this point forward. If the other partner reacts defensively or dismisses the concern immediately, the tension within the relationship increases. Instead of addressing the doubt directly, the conversation becomes another attempt to reinforce the original narrative. This reaction may temporarily silence the questioning partner, but it does not eliminate the doubt that has already taken root. In fact, dismissing those concerns often strengthens them. The individual begins realizing that their partner is more invested in maintaining the story than examining the truth of the situation. This realization can create a deeper sense of unease. The partnership that once felt supportive now begins feeling restrictive. The person who once shared the same certainty now appears unwilling to acknowledge changing circumstances. As this awareness grows, the questioning partner may start reconsidering their own role in the alliance. They reflect on the actions taken against the chosen one and the conversations that shaped the narrative. They may begin asking themselves whether the conflict escalated further than necessary, or whether certain assumptions were made too quickly. These reflections do not always lead to immediate action, but they create emotional distance between the partners. The alliance that once felt like a united effort now begins feeling like a responsibility that must be maintained, rather than a belief that comes naturally. Meanwhile, the chosen one remains unaware of the internal shift occurring within the partnership. Their focus remains on maintaining clarity and integrity in their own actions. Yet their calm resilience continues influencing the environment around them. Each moment where they respond with discipline rather than emotion reinforces the doubts already forming in the questioning partner's mind. The contrast between the chosen one's behavior and the narrative promoted by the alliance becomes increasingly difficult to ignore. This contrast creates a powerful psychological tension. The individual experiencing doubt begins realizing that the story they have been supporting may not align with the reality unfolding before them. Over time, this realization transforms the internal dynamic of the alliance completely. The partnership can only function effectively when both individuals share the same level of confidence in the narrative guiding their actions. Once one partner begins questioning that narrative, the alliance loses its foundation. Even if they continue presenting a united front publicly, the internal unity that sustained their cooperation has already begun dissolving. The questioning partner becomes more cautious about participating in conversations that reinforce the narrative. They may begin avoiding certain discussions or redirecting topics to avoid repeating statements that no longer feel accurate. These subtle shifts gradually weaken the alliance's ability to operate with the same coordination it once had. The other partner may sense that something has changed, but struggle to identify the exact cause. They notice that the enthusiasm or certainty that once defined their conversations is no longer present. This uncertainty creates a new layer of tension within the partnership. What was once a shared mission now feels like a fragile arrangement maintained by habit rather than conviction. And this moment, when one person inside the alliance begins doubting the story they helped create, marks the beginning of the end for the partnership that once seemed so certain of its success. When their relationship begins cracking, reveals the moment when the tension that was once directed entirely toward the chosen one begins turning inward, quietly destabilizing the very partnership that fueled the original attack. Up until this stage, the alliance had survived because both individuals believed they were working toward the same goal. Even when disagreements appeared, they could quickly return to their shared narrative that the chosen one was the problem. That narrative functioned like glue holding their partnership together. As long as they could blame an external target, their internal differences remained hidden beneath the surface. But once doubt began entering the mind of one partner, the balance sustaining the relationship started shifting in subtle ways neither of them fully understood at first. The person who had begun questioning the narrative no longer carried the same emotional intensity during conversations about the chosen one. Where they once responded immediately with reinforcement, they now hesitated, sometimes offering quieter or more neutral responses. These small shifts might seem insignificant from the outside, but inside the relationship, they were deeply felt. The other partner, who still believed firmly in the original plan, began sensing that the dynamic between them had changed. Humans are extremely sensitive to changes in emotional alignment, especially when a relationship has been built around shared certainty. The partner who remained committed to the strategy might begin asking subtle questions. Why does the other person seem less engaged when discussing the chosen one? Why are they no longer pushing the narrative as strongly as before? These questions introduce an entirely new tension into the partnership. What once felt like cooperation now begins feeling like imbalance. At first, both individuals may attempt to ignore this shift. They may continue interacting normally, repeating familiar talking points and maintaining the appearance of unity. But emotional undercurrents are difficult to hide for long. The partner who still believes in the strategy might begin pushing harder, hoping to reignite the same certainty that once existed between them. They may revisit past conversations, reminding the other person why they started opposing the chosen one in the first place. They repeat the narrative with greater intensity, believing that if they reinforce the story strongly enough, the partnership will return to its previous stability. Yet the partner who has begun doubting the narrative cannot simply erase the observations that led them to question it. Each time the topic resurfaces, the discomfort grows stronger. The chosen one's continued composure, the shifting perception of observers, and the realization that the strategy has not produced the expected results all remain present in their mind. When they hear their partner repeating the narrative with unwavering certainty, the gap between belief and reality becomes even more obvious. This gap creates internal tension that gradually transforms how they interact with each other. Conversations that once flowed easily now contain moments of silence or hesitation. One partner may speak passionately about the chosen one's supposed faults, while the other listens quietly, unsure how to respond without creating conflict. These moments may appear small, but they signal a deeper change in the emotional foundation of the relationship. A partnership built on shared conviction begins struggling when that conviction is no longer equally held. Over time, this imbalance often leads to the first open disagreements between the two individuals. What once felt like a coordinated effort begins turning into debates about strategy, perception, and responsibility. The partner who still believes in the plan might accuse the other of losing focus or becoming sympathetic toward the chosen one. Meanwhile, the questioning partner may respond by pointing out inconsistencies in the narrative or highlighting how the situation has evolved in ways they did not anticipate. These disagreements introduce a completely new dynamic into the relationship. The energy that was once directed toward opposing the chosen one is now partially redirected toward defending personal viewpoints within the partnership itself. The alliance begins experiencing internal friction that had previously been absent. Each disagreement exposes differences in perspective that were once hidden behind their shared mission. The partner who remains committed to the strategy may interpret the other's hesitation as betrayal. They might begin wondering whether their partner is losing loyalty or reconsidering their role in the conflict. This suspicion can create an atmosphere of defensiveness where both individuals become more cautious in how they speak to each other. Conversations become guarded rather than collaborative. The sense of unity that once defined the relationship slowly dissolves. Meanwhile, the partner who has begun doubting the narrative may start feeling emotionally drained by these interactions. What once felt like teamwork now feels like pressure to maintain a belief they are no longer sure about. Each conversation becomes a reminder of the growing divide between their observations and the story they helped promote earlier. This internal conflict can create a desire for distance, even if that distance is not openly expressed. They may begin avoiding discussions about the chosen one or limiting the amount of time spent interacting with their partner. As this distancing occurs, the cracks within the relationship become increasingly visible. The partnership that once appeared strong begins showing signs of instability to those around them. Observers may notice subtle shifts in how the two individuals interact, such as shorter conversations, less coordination, or moments where they appear disconnected from each other. The irony of this stage is that the alliance begins experiencing the same dynamic it once attempted to create for the chosen one. Suspicion, miscommunication, and emotional strain start appearing within the partnership itself. The pressure that was once directed outward now circulates internally. And throughout this entire process, the chosen one remains largely unchanged in their behavior. Their calm consistency continues acting as a stabilizing contrast to the growing instability within the alliance. The more the partners argue, question each other, or withdraw emotionally, the more obvious it becomes that their conflict with the chosen one was never as solid as they once believed. The chosen one did not need to dismantle the alliance directly. The simple act of maintaining integrity, patience, and composure allowed the internal weaknesses of the partnership to surface naturally. Over time, these cracks widen until the relationship that once seemed united in purpose begins falling apart under the weight of its own contradictions. The alliance that once appeared powerful slowly reveals itself to be fragile, sustained only by a shared narrative that could not survive when confronted with reality. And as the tension within their relationship continues building, it becomes increasingly clear that the partnership that once targeted the chosen one is now struggling to survive its own internal fractures. When their collapse becomes visible to everyone, marks the moment when the consequences of everything that unfolded behind the scenes finally move into the open, where others can clearly see them. For a long time, the conflict surrounding the chosen one existed within whispers, alliances, private conversations, and carefully controlled narratives. Much of the strategy depended on managing perception. As long as the alliance maintained a united front, the appearance of certainty gave their story weight. People who heard the accusations assumed there must be truth behind them, simply because multiple voices repeated the same claims. In many communities, repetition alone can create the illusion of credibility. Yet the strength of that illusion relies heavily on the stability of the people promoting it. Once the relationship between those individuals begins fracturing, the narrative they built together becomes much harder to sustain. At first, the collapse appears in subtle ways that only attentive observers notice. The two individuals who once spoke with identical certainty begin presenting slightly different versions of events. One may emphasize certain details, while the other avoids them entirely. Small inconsistencies appear in the stories they tell about the chosen one. What once sounded like a coordinated explanation now feels less organized, as though the pieces of the story are no longer fitting together as smoothly as before. For many listeners, this difference may initially feel confusing rather than alarming. But over time, confusion turns into curiosity. People begin asking quiet questions about why the story seems to change depending on who is speaking. The more those questions circulate, the more attention shifts toward the alliance itself rather than toward the chosen one. This shift is important because it reverses the original direction of scrutiny. Instead of the chosen one constantly defending their character, observers begin examining the behavior of the individuals who led the accusations. And once that shift happens, maintaining control of the narrative becomes extremely difficult. As the cracks within their relationship continue widening, the tension between the two partners starts appearing in public interactions. Conversations that once sounded confident now carry traces of irritation or defensiveness. One partner may interrupt the other during discussions about the situation. Another might contradict earlier statements or attempt to clarify details that previously seemed settled. These moments may seem minor, but they signal something important to anyone paying attention. When people who once stood together begin disagreeing openly, observers naturally begin reconsidering what they were told earlier. In communities where trust and reputation matter deeply, visible disagreement between former allies often raises more questions than any accusation ever could. Meanwhile, the chosen one continues demonstrating the same calm discipline that disrupted the alliance's strategy from the beginning. Their behavior remains steady, focused, and consistent. They do not chase after vindication or attempt to retaliate against the individuals who targeted them. Instead, they continue living and speaking with the same clarity they showed throughout the conflict. This consistency becomes powerful in the eyes of observers because it contrasts sharply with the instability now unfolding within the alliance. People who once believed the accusations begin reflecting on the difference between what they were told and what they have personally witnessed over time. The chosen one's composure slowly becomes a reference point against which the entire situation is measured. As the alliance weakens further, the emotional pressure within their relationship intensifies. The partners who once worked together now begin viewing each other with suspicion. Each person wonders whether the other is responsible for the narrative losing credibility. They may accuse each other of handling certain conversations poorly or revealing too much information during discussions with others. Blame quietly replaces cooperation. When alliances built on shared opposition collapse, the partners involved often redirect their frustration toward one another. This shift makes their disagreements more visible to those around them. Observers who previously stayed neutral now witness moments where the two individuals contradict each other publicly. Perhaps one partner attempts to soften their earlier accusations, while the other insists on repeating them. Perhaps one begins distancing themselves from the conflict entirely, while the other continues defending the original narrative with growing intensity. These differences create an unmistakable signal to the community that the unity once supporting the accusations has disappeared. And when that unity disappears, the story itself begins losing its authority. The collapse does not necessarily happen in a single dramatic moment. More often, it unfolds gradually as conversations circulate through the community. People compare what they have heard from different sources and notice how the details no longer match. They observe how the chosen one remains steady, while the individuals who once criticized them appear increasingly defensive. Over time, the environment that once felt uncertain about the chosen one's character becomes far more confident about what actually happened. The alliance that tried to control perception now struggles to explain its own contradictions. In some cases, one of the partners may attempt to distance themselves from the conflict entirely, suggesting that the situation was misunderstood or exaggerated. This attempt at retreat can further destabilize the relationship because the other partner may interpret it as betrayal. The tension between them becomes even more visible as each tries to protect their own reputation. Meanwhile, the chosen one continues focusing on growth, clarity, and forward movement, rather than revisiting the past. Their refusal to chase after validation or revenge reinforces the impression that their original stance came from integrity rather than ego. Observers begin recognizing that the chosen one's strength was not loud or aggressive, but disciplined and composed. The irony of this stage is that the alliance's collapse accomplishes something no defense from the chosen one could have achieved alone. By unraveling publicly, the partnership exposes the weaknesses in the narrative it once promoted. The same voices that once amplified the accusations now reveal their inconsistencies through disagreement and emotional tension. For many observers, this realization becomes a powerful moment of clarity. They begin understanding how easily perception can be influenced when people repeat the same story with confidence. But they also see how quickly that confidence dissolves when the truth begins emerging through actions rather than words. And as the community witnesses the alliance falling apart under the weight of its own contradictions, the chosen one's resilience takes on a new meaning. What once looked like isolation now appears as strength. What once looked like silence now appears as discipline. The person who was once targeted by coordinated opposition now stands in a completely different light. Their calm endurance has outlasted the strategy designed to undermine them. And the collapse of the alliance becomes visible proof that integrity, when maintained consistently, has a quiet power that no manipulation can sustain forever. When the truth outlives the plot against you, brings the story back to the deeper lesson hidden within everything that unfolded. What once looked like a coordinated effort, strong enough to damage the chosen one, ultimately revealed something very different. The couple who believed they could control the narrative and weaken the chosen one discovered that strategies built on manipulation rarely survive long when confronted by patience, clarity, and integrity. Their confidence at the beginning came from believing they understood how the chosen one would react. They assumed pressure would provoke anger, confusion, or retreat. Instead, the chosen one responded with discipline, restraint, and quiet strength. That response did something far more powerful than direct confrontation ever could. It allowed the truth to emerge gradually, in a way that no argument or defense could have forced. Throughout the entire conflict, the chosen one's greatest advantage was not louder words or stronger retaliation, but consistency. Each moment of composure created a contrast that observers eventually noticed. While accusations and narratives shifted around them, the chosen one's behavior remained stable. Over time, this stability became the most persuasive evidence of all. People began realizing that the person who remained calm under pressure was not the one hiding something. Instead, it was often those who relied on repeated accusations who struggled to maintain coherence when their alliance started fracturing. The collapse of the couple's relationship became the final stage of this realization. What once appeared as a united front slowly revealed internal doubt, disagreement, and blame. The same partnership that had once amplified the attack now exposed the weakness of the story it promoted. Observers did not need dramatic revelations to understand what happened. They simply watched how events unfolded. They noticed how the chosen one continued forward while the alliance that opposed them became unstable under the weight of its own contradictions. And that is where the deeper meaning of the chosen one's experience becomes clear. The situation was never only about surviving accusations or proving innocence. It was about demonstrating a form of strength that many people underestimate. The strength to remain grounded when others expect collapse. The chosen one's calm presence did not just protect their reputation. It also revealed the limits of manipulation itself. When someone refuses to participate in cycles of reaction and retaliation, those who depend on those reactions lose their ability to control the outcome. In the end, the chosen one did not defeat their opposition through force or public battles. They simply remained aligned with truth long enough for the truth to reveal itself. The couple's collapse became a natural consequence of the instability built into their strategy from the beginning. And the chosen one's resilience became something far more powerful than a personal victory. It became a reminder that integrity has a quiet endurance that manipulation cannot replicate. For anyone watching this story unfold, the lesson is clear. When people attempt to bring you down through coordinated effort, the most powerful response is not to mirror their chaos, but to maintain your clarity. Time has a way of exposing what emotion tries to hide. And when you stand firmly in your values, while others lose themselves in their own schemes, the truth eventually speaks louder than any accusation ever could.